If you like the words food, football, and 40% off, then Instacart has the perfect big game deal for you. Right now on the Instacart app, you can get $10 off a $25 order of eligible game day essentials like chips, dips, sips, and chicken strips. So what are you waiting for? Free snacks with your order? Because, yeah, Instacart has those too. Fees, taxes, and terms apply. Eligible items only while supplies last. Expires on February 9th.
Okay, business leaders, are you here to play or are you playing to win? If you're in it to win, meet your next MVP, NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is your full business management system in one convenient suite. With NetSuite, you're running your accounting, your finance, your HR, your e-commerce, and more, all from your online dashboard. Upgrade your playbook and make the switch to NetSuite, the #1 cloud ERP.
Get the CFO's guide to AI and machine learning at netsuite.com/podcast25. netsuite.com/podcast25.
You can support this podcast at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And on this episode, years after a woman was drugged and abducted by a mysterious doctor, she confronts her trauma by going back to the room she was held captive in. We'll talk about the documentary The Bunker from Viaplay. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of the These Are Their Stories podcast, my husband and love of my life, Kevin Flynn. Hi, Kevin.
I'm always ready to get more done.
Yeah?
Whatever that means. We've never really go to do that and more.
Well, the more is like the business section when we talk shit.
Oh, yeah, no one wants that. Okay.
Also with us is private investigator, certified pet detective, resident cat lady, and author of The Final Curtain, Laura Bricker. Hi, Laura.
Hey, Rebecca.
And finally, our captain of all things cynical, author of the City Trilogy of novels, host of Rip Current, Strange Arrivals, and our Patreon Deep Dive Book Club podcast host, Toby Ball. Hi, Toby.
Hey, Rebecca.
So, Kevin, this is Monday's program.
Mm-hmm.
What's coming up on Thursday's show?
So on Thursday, we're going to talk about the HBO original series, an update on our family.
So, guys, our dog had surgery on his foot.
Oh.
And it's been a disaster. A total freaking disaster. He had this like weird extra toe growing in between his two toes.
It was
like
a growth that was just as black as his other toe.
But it looked like a toe. Anyway, he had it taken off, and now he has this bandage, and now he has a donut on his neck, a bandage on his foot, so he doesn't lick the bandage. That's what the donut's for. And then he has to wear this like plastic IV bag boot when he goes outside because he likes to dig in the snow when he poops. And it does not fucking work, and he hates it, and he's miserable, and I hate it, and I'm miserable. And Kevin, what are we going to do about this shit?
I don't know. We're just going to like...
Can I give you a suggestion?
Sure, please.
I would put duct tape around his paw.
It's not a terrible idea.
And then video it, and then post it, and then take down the post, take out the part with the duct tape, and then put the post back up again.
Oh, I see.
Oh, he's foreshadowing our next our next review.
That's
okay.
right. That's a very,
it seems very apropos.
Yeah, because he's talking about duct tape. I'm like, he's got a bandage on. Like, why would you have to duct tape?
Well, make it waterproof. It's actually not a terrible idea.
I guess.
Or just rehouse them. If you can't deal with it, just rehouse them.
Send him, but don't mention it to anyone. Just do it.
Pretend he never existed.
Just take all photos of Stuart off of social media. My Instagram would be completely empty. Stuart, a.k.a. Lazarus. The dog who has almost died 50 times and still keeps ticking on.
Man, I guess we're going to have a lot of good stuff to talk about on Thursday.
I can't wait.
Yeah,
I'm actually really excited.
All right, sip your hands. I love it.
All right, so Kevin, should we talk about the thing we're going to be talking about? Because it's pretty dark.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's transition into that. Leading off.
What began as a romantic date quickly turned to bizarre horror. The 38-year-old doctor served strawberries dipped in chocolate and champagne. The strawberries were laced with a date rape drug called Rohypnol. The doctor loaded her into his car and took her to a remote area of Sweden. It was designed to hold more than one captive.
In 2015, after being given a date rape drug, Isabel Eriksson awoke in a locked bunker in Sweden, held captive by a mysterious doctor. Martin Trenneborg wanted to keep her as his girlfriend, subjected her to abuse, and refused to let her go. Though years have passed, Isabel has never dealt with the PTSD of the incident, but now she's willing to confront it on camera. The Swedish language documentary series The Bunker is available on the Nordic streaming service Viaplay, which is available through Amazon Prime, Roku, Xfinity X1, and other platforms. And we should mention, Kevin, Viaplay is one of these ones that has a 7-day trial, so it's worth checking out. Isabel recounts her ordeal for filmmakers, goes to counseling for the first time, and experiments with exposure therapy. That includes a visit to a reconstruction of the bunker where she was held in order to process the pain she's repressed for all these years. Spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about plot points from The Bunker. So if you want to remain spoiler-free, go to the estimated time code in our show notes for our thumbs up and thumbs down reviews. We should also mention that because we watch this in Swedish, because it actually is a Swedish language documentary, we're not going to be playing any clips in this episode. Right, Kevin?
Yeah, that's it. Maybe we'll have a nice atmospheric one.
Yes.
This is what it sounds like when they talk in Swedish.
Jag fick sån flashback och bara liksom att det bara skyller över mig liksom. Hela skräcken från kidnappningen.
So Kevin, why did this documentary remind you of another documentary that we recently watched?
Well, I just remember last year there was a documentary called American Nightmare, and this was the one where Denise Huskins was kidnapped, and it was kind of like a very Gone Girl-ish thing because she was kidnapped and held like this, and her boyfriend had to call the police and say that a guy dressed like a frogman broke in, and you know it was just
wild.
The real things that were happening were so ridiculous that the cops thought it was fake, and the viewer does too until they realize that it's just a really weird story. But the thing that kind of, in addition to sort of, this story about having been abducted and held for the purposes of being a sexual slave, you hear from Denise as well as Isabel telling their stories. And so one of the things that struck me about that is that, Denise was able to address her ordeal and she, like, her demeanor was like someone who's brave, like this difficult and really moving forward. That's how it came off. Now, there's obviously no right way or wrong way. Isabel comes off a little bit detached.
Yeah.
Now, that's not, of course, I can't really tell what she's saying for real. I'm reading it. I'm going by the inflection.
Well, the therapist also confirms that she's detached.
Yeah. And so it's not that she's cold or lack of empathy, but it really shows kind of like where she is in her process with dealing with this ordeal. So to the extent that you could say, oh yeah, it's been 10 years, she hasn't done anything on it, or like how far along is she really in this journey? We try not to give a lot to demeanor, but I think it indicates that, she really has some work to do here.
Yeah, Isabel is interesting. By the way, I don't believe Isabel Eriksson is her real name. What's interesting about this, Laura, is that it's bleak, right? It's a dark, dark documentary. What did you think when you began watching this?
So the first time I started watching this, I turned it off after 5 minutes because it was like Scandi noir, the pace, the background, her demeanor. I was like, I don't know if I'm in the right frame of mind to watch this quite yet. It's hard because there's like a stoicism about how this story is told in a way. Like, I love watching Scandi noir, but this is real life. And that first episode was very slow and deliberate. And you're watching subtitles. So I'm like, you really have to buckle in and be ready for this when you turn it on. Like I said, the first night I was like, I'm going to go back to shrinking on Apple TV right now. I'm not in the frame of mind for this. But I was like, okay, so this is a documentary being done in Sweden. And how would this have been done in America?
Yeah.
By contrast, do they lose viewers by telling it this way? Or is this the pace that we are used to if we're watching Swedish documentaries? I don't know.
It's interesting. The New York Times had a really glowing write-up of this documentary, and they talked about the starkness of it. It sort of alluded to that and alluded to the style of it. And they looked at it as a sort of commentary on true crime media in a way, because we're listening to a victim tell her story just like straight up. And this is what it actually sounds like when a victim tells their story. Toby, what did you think about the approach to Isabel as the victim of this crime in this documentary?
Well, I mean, a lot of people talk about being victim centric and the stuff they put out. And I think this is what it actually looks like, is that it's her story. And the perpetrator is really a story in as much as he sort of interacts with her. I mean, there's a little bit of stuff about who he was, and they talk a little bit with people who knew him, mostly to say he didn't strike me being that way. So, 95% of it is about her. When you think about some of the things that are pretty common in American true crime. Like nobody's in the middle of a empty warehouse with sawdust all over the floor talking about stuff sort of randomly. Like everybody's in like a place that you would expect to find them, like in their office or their house or something. Like the story is very dramatic in and of itself, but the way it's produced doesn't try to make more of the drama than she is in her telling of it. And then they have some very, I guess the word is intense, but this footage towards the end where Isabel and her kidnapper go into a police station together. And, you know, they've got the police station camera and it just shows you different things that are happening. There's no sound, but you kind of see how they're interacting with each other. You kind of see how his demeanor is, and it's real. And it's not the kind of drama that something like that you would expect to see if you were watching like if it was been a recreation, it would have been a lot of like sweating and fidgeting and stuff like this. And in fact, it just looks like two random people just going in like they have no problems in the world. The whole time I was watching this, I was like, for all the people, and I think like last week that Dakota, whatever it was, you know, I think they talked about how they're victim centric, and that kind of extended as far as, oh, this person was super nice and everybody really liked them. Whereas this is really, it's focusing on the victim's experience. And that is the main thrust of the thing. And it's not like this guy was an evil genius and look what he did.
Right.
It's more, she kind of fell into that through no fault of her own.
The last time I heard you describe something this way, Toby, was when we talked about Undercurrent, the HBO documentary about the Kim Wall submarine incident, because obviously she's dead. She couldn't speak for herself, but really the whole thing was about her and not about the dude who built the submarine. So it's interesting to hear you say that again. Kevin, Toby mentioned the locales in the documentary. I'm not, 100% sure that some of them weren't, rented spaces that were supposed to look like X or Y, but the office that we see the therapy in looks very much like the rumpus basement room in The Patient.
The rumpus basement room in Bill Rankin's house.
Well, that too.
Yeah.
But
as far as we know,
it sort of guides. I almost feel like the aesthetic of that room, that sort of 70s carpeted, wood paneled aesthetic, kind of is followed in the documentary by the style of the filmmaking. Can you talk about that style?
Well, 100% all that stuff's from IKEA, right? I mean, in Sweden, so
yeah.
Like maybe from IKEA you can get a bunker. I don't know. It just
I think some of the furniture in the bunker was from IKEA.
I doubt that he
those heavy ass doors.
Yeah, I doubt he put all that together with Allen wrenches, but okay. But your actual question here about sort of like the style of it and how it's informed. I mean, it's informed by Scandi Noir, right? I mean, that's very much the way that it's framed, and that the shadow and the color correction and everything, making it look, to have it like look like film. And like there's just like this, one scene for B-roll purposes, which is about like going to the local, I guess, YMCA or whatever, and going for a swim in the swimming pool with moody blue light filtering in from the big windows. But it's just a stylistic choice. I mean, even the office there where they are doing, there's lighting on them on the couch, but like deep dark background behind it. There's like at times like a dramatic artificiality employed when the real drama of what's going on is probably sufficient.
It's interesting. You very often will say that something is made to look like it's filmed on film, and it's not. Filming on film is coming back. I don't know if you know that, Kevin. Like The Brutalist, the movie that's nominated for an Oscar, I believe that was filmed on film. Oh. That's actually something that's like really coming back. So I think that's something we should watch to the end credits if we think something looks like film from now on, because it could be. You never know. Mm-hmm. So, Laura, Kevin just mentioned that PTSD trauma therapy situation. Mm-hmm. We actually get a lot of interviews with the therapist, and we see a little bit of her talking in therapy, but I'm not 100% sure if we're watching real sessions here, or we're sort of watching an interview with a therapist who then also talks to her. What do you think?
They were trying to do two things here. They were trying to show her story and recount her story from her perspective. And then they were trying to kind of put in this like, well, we're going to have the PTSD therapist and have like PTSD immersion therapy here by having her return to the scene in this recreated bunker. But the therapy it felt kind of forced to me. Like, God knows, like, I'm a professional therapy patient. I've been going to therapy forever. I'm like, it felt like almost staged, or maybe this is just the style of therapy that she was in, but it felt...
Scandi noir therapy?
Yeah, Scandi noir stilted therapy.
They have to do it outside. Everybody's got chapped lips.
Yeah, exactly. Also, I had some questions about the way that they were taking her out to this recreated bunker, because that's something that I know she was doing it under the umbrella of her therapist, but I wanted a little bit more about the actual preparation for that, because I think that could actually be more damaging than helpful and almost re-traumatizing and not healing if they're doing it in the wrong way. And I don't feel like we got a lot of context about like what were the parameters for her going out there, other than like they're driving her in this dark car and now we're in this warehouse and now she's in and she's laying on the bed. And I was like, okay, that's great. But like, there's definitely like, that's one of those things you can't fuck up in the way that you set it up, or you're going to actually set her back in her therapy, I think.
Yeah. Toby, what did you think about this whole idea of having her do the exposure therapy? I don't know, how familiar you are with it. I'm a little bit familiar with it for certain things, but we're talking about like a real trauma here.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I have some questions about whether you're actually watching her go in for the first time. And, I don't know a ton about it, but this is the end point of like months, if not years of therapy, getting you ready to face this stuff. And the idea that you'd have cameras rolling and you'd have to be kind of commentating to a camera about what you're feeling and stuff doesn't strike me as like sort of best practices for therapy.
What about getting back on the horse, Toby?
So the getting back on the horse thing, I was like, what the fuck are they talking about? Like, because I think the whole thing with getting back on a horse is like the horse threw you and you want to ride a horse again. But rather than just like wait months and months until you get over it, like get back on that horse, because it's just going to be harder and harder the more you wait. If that's the idea behind this, like, is she like trying to get ready to be abducted again? Like, it didn't make any sense to me. I'm like, what? She doesn't need to get back on that horse.
Fighting shape, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's necessary for her to prepare herself mentally for a second abduction.
Yeah.
I think it was kind of an interesting framing device, but whether they actually, in truth, like you were actually watching her go through her sort of therapeutic steps, I could be wrong, but while I was watching it, I was like, okay, so they're kind of like playing this out because they're trying to make it a little bit different than just like a straight telling of what happened. They're trying to have some sort of emotional resonance beyond just the story, but it doesn't seem like it's real.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those times where I wish that the producers had jumped in and like we actually heard from them, because, hear about not only the motivations, but sort of like the operation of how it got put together. I mean, they give us a card at the beginning sort of explaining right off that like this happened and she hasn't confronted this trauma and now that she is. But I wanted to know what parts of this journey on camera were her idea and what was proposed to her by somebody else. And is that somebody else a documentarian? Is it the therapist? I think, who came up with the plan to reconstruct the bunker down to the details of what the fuck she had in the refrigerator.
The ball on the floor for the dog.
The brand of toothpaste. Like, it's like, who came up with that idea? Because at another point, the trauma therapist says that Isabel's holding back because of the cameras. Right? She says that in particular. And I felt like that really needed to be addressed, because the producers have to confront for us whether they're documenting something or influencing something here. Are they influencing something for the worse here, right? We are the viewers. Are we impeding the progress because we want to see this, or that we're being subjected to what is happening to her and maybe it's being made worse by this whole idea? I mean, there even might be like a higher thematic concept about voyeurism and true crime consumption.
I think there is.
You could have kind of worked that in, but that's why like having those producers kind of come in and explain it like would provide some more clarity, just like we provide clarity with all of our content on Patreon.
Just like that. We're in the business section.
It's exactly the same.
Kevin, our Patreon is so much like this documentary in so many ways. You nailed it.
Yeah, it is. It is. First of all, it's rarely in English.
Yeah.
It's stark.
You get locked.
Bleak.
You get locked away and forced to do something that you don't want to do.
Yeah, you can bring your dog if you want. I think the point we have to make is that not only was she kidnapped, but the kidnapper brought her dog along.
Her dog was
her little
kidnapped, too.
tiny dog. That was weird.
That
was so weird. But look, you know what's not weird is all the great stuff that again, I'm just trying to segue right into this pitch
you
here.
are. Not ham-fisted at all.
Go to patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia. You're going to get all sorts of great exclusive stuff. More than 700 exclusive episodes.
Wow.
It'll keep you busy for a little while. If you want the newest stuff, you got the Crime Writers on After Show. And this week, we're going to kind of talk a little bit about this theme. We're actually going to get into a review on Thursday, as we've already indicated, an update on our family, which is about family vloggers. And it also raises kinds of questions about, okay, what ought to be private? You know, what's okay to give? And in a way, the four of us are in kind of similar situations, not to the extent as like a family vlog, but we want to talk about like what choices have we made about what we want to tell the world and what we want to keep private.
Yeah.
And then we're going to say what the private thing was. No, I'm just kidding. We're just going to blow our own privacy. So where do we draw those lines? We're going to talk about that. I think it should be really interesting.
That should be interesting.
We have other great exclusive content like Married with Podcast, which is our advice show. Rebecca does her Karen Reed updates on the Readathon.
Yes, there's a lot going on.
And Laura Bricker has the Leave It to Bricker podcast. On the next Leave It to Bricker, Laura is going to new heights. No, not the Kelsey podcast, but she's actually going to are you going to go all the way to the top of Mount Washington?
I don't know. I mean, I'm going in the Snowcat thing, which is like a van with these like crazy snowmobile tire things up Mount Washington.
If you saw The Shining, you know what...
I found out this guy from Exeter, his retirement job is driving this thing up and down Mount Washington in the winter, where they have the most extreme weather in the world. So,
wow.
Delivering supplies to the people at the observatory?
No, he's taking people like me up and down to be like, hey,
that's it.
Yeah,
look at this. It's like
for no fucking reason.
It's like the space shuttle of Mount Washington, just getting people to look at the ISS and coming back down.
Yeah, it's like, here we go, but we don't have to pay $1 million.
And another great thing that you can get is Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcast. Not only get to listen to the podcast, but if you join us at the Deep Divers level, you get to watch the recording, take part in the chat, and give your own thoughts about the book. The next book Toby is covering Murder on the Bayou. Toby, who are your guests?
My guests are Deep Dive favorite Simone Paget and a couple of first-timers, Justine Vanderloon and Kimberly Griffin.
Nice.
Wonderful. That sounds great. We would love for you to join us on Patreon. One little tip. People keep asking what's going on with Apple Podcast. If you have the Patreon app and you got it on your iPhone, as you probably know, Apple, like, all of a sudden is charging a whole lot extra for that service. So people are like, are the crime writers not getting all the money that we pledged? No, we get the money that you pledge, but what's going to happen is Apple's going to add an additional 30% on your bill. And we don't want that to happen.
They're not cutting 30% out
They're
of
not
the
cutting 30% out of us.
Interesting, yeah.
We're still getting the amount that...
So join on your browser.
Join on your browser, join on your Android.
Yeah.
This only affects new patrons.
Yeah.
So if you've been with us for a long time, don't worry about it. But like if you're
Use the app,
if you're
but
joining
join-
us at the $5 level,
Yeah.
check to make sure you got charged $5.
Yes.
If not, and if you want me to walk you through it, I am happy to do that.
Make a video, walk people through it. I will say, so join on your browser desktop, but you can use the Patreon app after you join, because the Patreon app rules. It's amazing.
Yeah, and you can still use the Apple Podcast app to listen. We just don't want you doing the purchases. Or, maybe you got mad money and you just want to burn it like that. That's
Yeah,
fine.
you
You
don't
do
care.
you.
Good for you.
Yeah, good for you. So that's
Can
some
you
of
adopt me, please?
those are just some of the ways that you can help us keep this show going here at Crime Writers On by joining us at Patreon, patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media.
And sign up for Kevin's newsletter, the Crime Writers On newsletter at crimewriterson.com. It's awesome. Kevin, does thus end the business section?
Thus ends the business section.
I'm going to go ahead and fade that music out right now. All right, Kevin, let's finish up our discussion.
Yeah, because we got to make dinner.
We do?
Yeah, we almost never have time for dinner, and that's why HelloFresh is so fantastic.
Oh, HelloFresh.
So you can skip the grocery store and make cooking at home easy, fun, and affordable with HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. Of course, it's delivered right to your door. But what we like about it is that you don't have to take too much time to make it. Now, of course, they got all sorts of great recipes, like the pork sausage spaghetti bolognese.
Ooh, my
It's in
favorite.
their Hall of Fame. Very easy to make. You got a little extra time. You want to put that effort into the gingery coconut chicken soup.
So good.
Sometimes, though, you just got to get it done, right? Because you've been podcasting all day. So HelloFresh's prep and bake meals come together within 5 minutes of prep, while HelloFresh's 15-minute meals are done in just 3 simple steps.
Incredible.
So you can finish up what you're doing. You can put some great food on the table. Remember, all the time, though, you also save from, like, grocery shopping.
Oh, yeah. Kevin, there's so many great options here.
Yeah, and you can get up to 10 free meals with a free high-protein item for life at HelloFresh.com/CWO10FM.
Okay, CWO10FM.
Yeah, for like 10 free meals. 1 item per box with active subscription. Free meals applied as discount on first box. New subscribers only. Varies by plan. That's up to 10 free HelloFresh meals. Just go to HelloFresh.com/CWO10FM.
CWO10FM. So, Kevin, who's our next sponsor?
Oh, we're brought to you by Quince.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, with the new year comes a new opportunity to reimagine ourselves and, more importantly, our wardrobes.
Incredible.
Refresh your look with quality pieces and stay on budget with Quince. You know what happens in January?
What?
We talk about all the things that we wanted for Christmas but never got, so we buy it for ourselves.
Yes.
That includes high-quality clothes, things that look good, feel good, and you can get that from Quince.
Kevin, I am a Quince fanatic.
You are.
I have multiple items in multiple colors of the same item from Quince. I love their cashmere sweaters.
They're cozy Mongolian cashmere sweaters.
Incredible sweaters at a great price.
Yeah, they're always priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands, and they're able to do that by partnering directly with top factories, cutting out the cost of the middleman. No middleman.
I love how they actually show you, Kevin. Mm-hmm. They actually show you like what it would cost if you bought it somewhere else, like from the same place. It's incredible. So upgrade your closet this year without that upgraded price tag. Go to quince.com/crime for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/crime to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/crime.
If you like the words food, football, and 40% off, then Instacart has the perfect big game deal for you. Right now on the Instacart app, you can get $10 off a $25 order of eligible game day essentials like chips, dips, sips, and chicken strips. So what are you waiting for? Free snacks with your order? Because, yeah, Instacart has those too. Fees, taxes, and terms apply. Eligible items only while supplies last. Expires on February 9th.
So, Laura, in the first episode, we get this very weird moment where Martin's next door neighbor, or down the street neighbor, basically says she believes that the kidnapping was Isabel's fault.
Yeah.
And then the filmmaker's like,
just partially.
The filmmaker's like, do you really think that? And she's like, yes, absolutely, I think that. What were you thinking when you heard the neighbor say that?
Yeah, well, it was interesting because they waited until the second episode after this statement to reveal that Isabel was working as like a high-end escort sex worker at the time, and that is how she met Martin. She was like girlfriend for hire. And so I was like, interesting that they chose to wait to reveal that detail, because it's like that shouldn't play a part in somebody being held captive in a freaking bunker and all the awful things that happen in that bunker. But in a way, I was like, they knew she was going to be judged. And so they waited to reveal the other circumstances of how this played out. And even doing that, you see the prejudice of like, yeah, it's her fault. Like, and even, at the end, Isabel says, well, I would tell people don't get into sex work because it's
dangerous.
It's dangerous.
Yeah.
But it was interesting to then see that part of the story. And they didn't shy away from it when they get into it. They're showing pictures of her with like different men. And I was like, oh my God, these are like dating profiles where they like put something over somebody's face and exit out. And they'll be like, here's a nice picture of me with this person who I'm no longer dating. But also, like you said earlier, Rebecca, this may not be her real name. I can see why, because she's probably still facing that sort of victim blaming. Like, you're the victim because you were the one who was doing sex work. But holy shit, can we just talk about the level of setup that this guy had with the freaking...
In the bunker?
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah,
I want Toby's thoughts on the reveal as well. I mean, it was interesting that we learned that in Swedish, the words girlfriend experience are translated as girlfriend experience.
Girlfriend experience.
Toby, what did you think about that second episode reveal of Isabel's profession at the time she was kidnapped?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Laura that they held it back so that people who would be prone to blaming a sex worker for any trouble she ran into, would have to suspend that and have an emotional response without that knowledge. And then in the second episode, they disclose it. And then does that change somebody's opinion or not? I mean, it obviously should not, but that's not always the way it works. I thought it was also interesting to have that little tiny bit of like teasing, because I was like,
with a neighbor.
Yeah, I was like, "What do you?
Why is it
her fault? Is it just because she's like very attractive? Like she should be less attractive? I don't know what you're trying to say." I guess the other thing that was kind of interesting, she does say at the end, like, I wouldn't recommend it to anybody, but there's a whole bunch of times where she talks about what a great time she had while she was doing it.
Yes.
And, you know, I mean, it seemed like kind of like on this high end thing. So it looks like she was just partying her ass off, basically, and making a lot of money and stuff. And it's obviously she's being sort of honest about how the whole thing is, and that, you know, all that other stuff doesn't sort of compensate for the fact that she had this like 6 days of absolute insane terror that, you know, she got out of, I guess, a little bit through her own, like she thinks she played it the right way, which I guess she did. But to a certain extent, it was more a matter of his being clearly mentally ill, but just not being able to kind of handle the situation and just like, all right, we got to figure out a way to get you out of here without me getting into trouble.
I would like to transition to the actual crime for a little bit. At one point, Kevin, Isabel goes to the police evidence warehouse to look at the evidence. And, you know, she's looking through all the stuff. And then the cop pulls this creepy fucking mask out of the box and throws it on the table, and Isabel is like really traumatized by that.
Yeah.
What do you think about that whole mask reveal? That this guy would go down to the bunker wearing a mask just to fuck with her?
This was crazy, right? I mean, you already understand what the stakes are here, and like, okay, it was bunker. I mean, you know, that's easy enough to grasp. And part of what's going on is that she is confronting a lot of the evidence for the first time. So they'd be giving her like crime scene photos and reports and things like that. And you see her going through it. But they said there's other things that she couldn't have access to, but they made arrangements. And one of these things was going, like you said, going to the police warehouse, which of course...
The police museum.
The police museum is what it's called, yeah. Which doesn't have any overhead lighting, apparently. Again,
nope. Dark as fuck.
Dark as fuck. And pulls out this rubber mask, and it's not like a Halloween mask. It's like one of those latex realistic ones that like go over the whole shoulders and everything. And there was an incident where apparently she thought there was people in the house and she was screaming for help, and this guy comes down. Stranger comes in, and it's really just Martin the kidnapper wearing a big fucking rubber thing over his head. Yeah, it just was weird.
Testing her loyalty.
But the look of it, like, he didn't get a pretty mask.
No.
He didn't get like the Brad Pitt one.
No,
like he got murderer.
Yeah, he got
the dude from Trapped mask.
Well, he had like 3, right?
Yeah.
You see a few.
Yeah. But again, you know, it just turned up the ick creep factor so much. And again, it's like, not that you need like proof that this was traumatic.
Yeah.
But you're like, oh, wow, this is a whole other fucking level of trauma here. This is so weird, so strange, so ugh. Anyway, that's what that was all about.
There is an expert in the documentary, Laura, talking about the bunker itself. And it's like a guy who specializes in bunkers.
The bunker expert. Because there's a need for bunker experts, Rebecca.
The
describing all of the locks, the door system. It's very clear that she would never have been able to escape this place. But it's also clear from seeing the photos that he put a lot of time and care and planning into this thing on the Sheila LaBar version of farm version in Sweden. Like, it was scary as hell, right?
When they showed that overhead picture of what that place looked like and like what was around, it was fucking terrifying. I was like, this is like something out of a horror movie. The red house, and there was this like red barn off to the side, and just out in this like bleak country setting with nothing else around. And you're like, what the fuck? And it was like when he was talking about it, when they were like, when we're getting to hear from him, and he was saying how he just kind of got tired of people. So he just went to the country, and he's like checked out to the country. And I'm like, oof. But I mean, I was glad at least there was a toilet in the bunker. Like, that was a nice touch, but no hot water. No hot water in the bunker. I was like, but it was like a better toilet. Like, I'm like, and other bunker
wasn't it like a 2x4 or something? It was weird.
It had to be lifted off the floor so that the water could flow. That's how toilets work.
It wasn't like a bucket. It was like, I was like, okay, so she got a toilet. Okay. But like the ceiling in the bunker, there was
It's like virtually a spa.
Yeah, hygiene was super important to that guy.
He was like,
wanted her
better
to brush her teeth
because you're not getting dental care down here.
Doesn't like the dog peeing on the floor.
Yes.
Yeah.
You should have taken the dog.
But instead of killing the dog, he takes the dog out for walks. He's
not a monster, Rebecca. Come on.
Yeah.
He's super complex.
I mean, but he doesn't even rape her. I mean, he wants to. He wants her to want to have sex with him, right?
right.
Yeah.
That's the whole end game. And Toby, we get something about him. I'm curious to know what you think of him because we do hear from him directly in his police interviews, but we also learn something about him that might provide some insight into what the fuck is going on with this guy. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so I think this being very victim-centric, they're not trying to make excuses for this guy or provide reasons or whatever. It's more sort of what her experience is. But if you do kind of put together the things that you do hear about him, I mean, it sounds as though he had some kind of surgical procedure when he was in his late teens, that something happened to his genitals where they were mutilated or altered or something. And even Isabel said she'd never seen anything like it. And I mean, it sounds kind of as
She was basically like, I've seen a lot of penises.
Yeah, I didn't want to go there, but I think that's what.
But not one like this.
Yeah.
So I mean, it seemed to me that he's a doctor. I mean, people talked in fairly good terms about him when they talked to people who knew him. He says himself that it was easy for him to get dates and stuff. But it seems to me that, at least in his mind, what happened in that surgery is kind of a deal killer with women. Like, he's an incel, but not in the way that most people are. Like, for him, like, I think he's got like the trappings of somebody who would be dateable, I guess.
So I guess my question is, can he actually have sex?
Yes, he can, because he did with Isabel.
Yeah, before he kidnapped her.
I mean, they found a condom wrapper and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. It's funny, Toby, that you would say he's an incel who doesn't behave like other incels. He literally locked a woman in a bunker.
No. I didn't say he did behave like other incels. He behaves exactly like them. But his problem is not like I can't relate to women or I can't talk to women or women don't like me. It's I get to a certain point and then they find out something about me that's just a deal killer right off the bat.
Yeah.
So it'll never happen for me. Like, there's not even, like, for him, there's no hope. So
I don't think it's the dick, by the way.
He acts like an incel, but it's not for the same reason that other guys are, which is like, I can't get a date or whatever, because he like clearly can.
He's not talking about Brads and Chads, right?
I don't know what you're talking about, but I assume that he isn't.
Incels call like men who can be with women Chads. That's like the whole thing.
Really?
Right? Yeah, she's dating that Chad. That's a whole thing. I feel bad for her name Chad. What do you think, Kevin, about the whole...
I have the same notes as Toby, actually, that, again, discerning motivations can always be very tricky. But, I think certainly this idea that he had some sort of trauma to his sexual organs happened later in his adolescence. He said made him feel inadequate. And I guess you could see why, because the language is very incel. It's very, no one will love me, so I'm kidnapping you until you love me, right? And there was the one night where he slept in the same bed as her.
That was weird.
And they don't get into a lot of, they probably do not need to get into a lot of, like, how often, like, was she raped every day, more than once, not at all? They don't really get into a lot of that. So we were kind of left with the impression, like, on this evening, they didn't have sex, but whatever it was, the important point was that he wanted the cuddle experience. He wanted the girlfriend experience, that kind of canoodling, because he didn't feel like he could get that any other way. But obviously, there are other people in the world that have similar trauma or similar conditions that don't build a fucking bunker and then drug somebody with Rohypnol-laced chocolate strawberries and put a cannula in their arms so they can... Anyway, it's not an excuse, but it is more of an explanation that we get for these kinds of people than we normally do in a true crime documentary.
It's interesting to me that he was going to, like, let her go, essentially, right? He was going to get it was like the whole thing where it was sort of reminded me of Woman of the Hour, which in that movie, the girl at the end ends up convincing the guy that she's like into him. And so he's going to take her sort of back or whatever. And then they end up in this police station situation so she can pick up her keys, because they actually go to her apartment Her keys, there's a note on the door saying your keys are at the police station. He takes her there, and the cops, I thought this part was very suspenseful when the cops were telling the story about what happened at the police station, and then we watch it unfold, and we see them separate her, like, only you come in, and she turns around and says, do you want to come to the dude? And to Martin, and then the cops are like, no, we want to talk to just you, and then she immediately spills the whole thing. Laura, what did you think of the fact that he even took her to that police station?
That was absolutely wild. I can't think of anything else that we've seen in this level of detail with like his perspective and her perspective. But watching those videos as they're just like sitting there in the lobby, and even when she goes
for hours and hours,
it was so freaking wild. And then even when she goes in with the officer, like you think, okay, he should like hit the fucking trail. He's just still sitting there like waiting for her because he really thinks she's not going to turn him in. But that also, like, I think shed more light on him and sort of his particular issues, that he would believe that she wasn't going to rat him out and tell the police what happened, that he actually believed she was just going to go in and be like, oh yeah, I was out of town with my girlfriend and I need my keys now or whatever. But, he was such a complex character. And I think hearing from him throughout, like, he was so direct in the way that he described everything and the reason that he did everything and how everything played out. And then what did they send, like 3 officers out to get him? And even then he was just like, oh, okay, nothing to see here. What do you mean? You know?
Toby, quick question for you before we wrap it. We have talked before about the harshness of the American criminal legal system and our long sentences here, and how we've compared it to Scandinavia, for instance, and I think Norway, it's like a 17-year maximum and so forth. This guy's already out. It's been less than 10 years and he's already out. Did that surprise you? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess he'd be gotten for kidnapping. I mean, I don't know exactly what the charges are. Sexual assault. It doesn't seem very long. And I'm usually like the first person to be like, you're putting this guy away for 3 decades for this. But it seems a little late, but at the same time, 7 years is a lot of time. And you don't know if that was his sentence. I mean, the dude clearly needs a lot of counseling. That would be super helpful for him. But yeah, it does seem in between when he got arrested and when they actually made this documentary, he did his entire time and then got out, right? Because at the end, she's like, yeah, that's why I bolted Sweden. Yep. So, I mean, it was not a whole lot of time.
If you like the words food, football, and 40% off, then Instacart has the perfect big game deal for you. Right now on the Instacart app, you can get $10 off a $25 order of eligible game day essentials like chips, dips, sips, and chicken strips. So what are you waiting for? Free snacks with your order? Because, yeah, Instacart has those too. Fees, taxes, and terms apply. Eligible items only while supplies last. Expires on February 9th.
Okay, business leaders, are you here to play or are you playing to win? If you're in it to win, meet your next MVP. NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is your full business management system in one convenient suite. With NetSuite, you're running your accounting, your finance, your HR, your e-commerce, and more, all from your online dashboard. Upgrade your playbook and make the switch to NetSuite, the #1 cloud ERP.
Get the CFO's guide to AI and machine learning at netsuite.com/podcast25. netsuite.com/podcast25.
Where'd you get those shoes? Easy. They're from DSW. Because DSW has the exact right shoes for whatever you're into right now. You know, like the sneakers that make office hours feel like happy hour. The boots that turn grocery aisles into runways. And all the styles that show off the many sides of you, from daydreamer to multitasker and everything in between. Because you do it all in really great shoes. Find a shoe for every you at your DSW store or DSW.com.
This is an ad from BetterHelp Online Therapy. We always hear about the red flags to avoid in relationships, but it's just as important to focus on the green flags. If you're not quite sure what they look like, therapy can help you identify those qualities so you can embody the green flag energy and find it in others. BetterHelp offers therapy 100% online, and sign up only takes a few minutes. Visit BetterHelp.com today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com.
All right, let's do what we do. Let's let our listeners know, should they check out the documentary The Bunker? It's a 3-part series, and it's on an app called Viaplay, which is very easy to find, by the way. Laura Bricker, thumbs up or thumbs down for this documentary, The Bunker?
I'm going to go thumbs up on this. And I'm going to say this wasn't something that was easy to watch. It was bleak. It was intense. It was terrifying at parts. I thought it was really interesting to see a true crime documentary told from the perspective of a Swedish documentary film crew and see how they approach telling the type of a story compared to how we might see it if we were watching like an American version of this story. And I turned this off in the beginning because I was like, I had to be in the right headspace to watch it. I think what was really fascinating to me is that we had all perspectives covered in this. We had incredible tape from not only the victim, but the perpetrator, and lots of details. So you really came away feeling like you had a complete picture of what happened and why. And the only part that I didn't love about this, that I don't really feel like they connected the dots on, was trying to incorporate the PTSD angle and the victim kind of going through some certain therapies related to the PTSD. I felt like that didn't really add up in the way that flowed with the rest of the story. But overall, this was really unique. I mean, we watch so many things that are exactly the same. I can't remember when we've watched something like this. So thumbs up.
Toby Ball, thumbs up or thumbs down for The Bunker?
What this kind of reminded me of was, and I don't remember what year it was, but it was a long time ago when Silence of the Lambs came out, and that, you know, won the Oscar and stuff. And I saw that. And then a few days later, I went to see a French-Dutch film called The Vanishing.
Of course you did.
Which was like everything that Silence of the Lambs wasn't, where Silence of the Lambs was bombastic and just crazed and just like all these crazy, super suspenseful scenes. And The Vanishing is just like, the thing that's really creepy about it is all this stuff is kind of taking place in everyday life. And it's very understated, but is more powerful. In my mind, when I was done, I was like, well, that's how you actually do it. Like, it's understated, and you don't have to get through the bombast to get to what's truly sort of troubling about it. And I kind of felt the same way about this, is that just by being so sort of matter of fact about everything, and that includes the woman, the victim, who's sort of the central part of this story, not being super demonstrative in sort of the way she talks about things. But it, for whatever reason, for me, it allowed me to kind of access a little bit more easily sort of the actual horror and trauma that happens there, because you're not like dealing with sort of this other layer of sort of produced suspense or whatever. So anyway, I'm a thumbs up. It's not perfect, but I wish there was more stuff that was kind of like this, because it's just, you're telling the story, and the story itself can drive enough interest and sort of emotional resonance and all these things that we look for in really good crime stuff, without sort of the bells and whistles or the interviews in empty bars or whatever that we get so used to. So anyway, thumbs up.
Kevin Flynn.
I'm going thumbs up. This was unlike anything that we've seen before. The setup is really incredible, about a kidnapping victim who has not dealt with her trauma and is going to do it by confronting it, including the evidence on camera, and then eventually leading up to a return trip to the bunker where she was kept. I'm not sure about the efficacy of the therapy, though it was interesting to watch. I will say that the filmmakers did a really good job of sort of revealing certain plot points at the right time, turning the right card over in the right order to make this an interesting watch. You know, if you don't know anything about the crime, that part is very intriguing, but also you put this layer on it of this, you know, layer of documentary filmmaking on top of it, where you're following her as she is trying to confront what happened to her. It just brought a whole different layer to it. And you got to read the subtitles, but that's fine, because I think that even if you have to read, you still can capture the essence of what this woman is going through. Her earlier cool detachment, and then where she winds up at the end of the process. I'm a thumbs up.
I'm a thumbs up too, and that's coming from someone who really loves The Silence of the Lambs. It did sweep the Oscars the year it came out, by the way. I think
Didn't Crash sweep the Oscars too?
Yeah, that movie sucked. But no, I don't know if Crash swept it, but Crash won the surprise Best Picture. But yeah, I think this is great. It's so interesting. The protagonist in the story herself is fascinating and like mesmerizing to watch. And I will tell you, if you're considering watching this, again, Viaplay is easy to find. Look for it. Just ask your TV remote to find it, and then you get a free trial for 7 days if you don't feel like paying for yet another service. And watch this, because I'll just let you know though, it does start slow. It's a kind of a slow build. The first episode is a lot of setup, and then the beginning of the subsequent episodes sort of do some repetition, which is sort of like a previously on kind of situation, and it's a little, as a binge, is kind of annoying that way. But I agree with what everybody said here. It's fascinating. It is haunting. I really do think it's a commentary on the way that we usually consume these kinds of stories. There's almost nothing sensational about it, and that kind of makes it sensational. It really shows the depravity of the crime without being salacious. So yeah, big thumbs up for me for The Bunker. A surprise enjoyment for this documentary. All right, now it's time for my favorite part of the podcast, a little something I like to call
The Crime of the Week.
That's what we call it, the Crime of the Week. A man in Malaysia has opened a new business to help insecure men improve their love lives. Sounds familiar. For a fee, he'll let guys beat him up in front of their girlfriends. Shazali Suleiman has a large build and the appearance of a street tough. He offers to show up at a predetermined location, wait for the client to leave for the bathroom, and then start harassing his date. When the client returns, he proves his mettle by beating Suleiman up. He says the fight is just an act and no one gets hurt. But social media users worry about the harm this villain for hire could inflict on the unsuspecting girlfriends. Suleiman defends his act of relationship building, saying he's helped several men who were thought to be weak look strong in the eyes of the woman they love. So panel, he doesn't have to go so far as getting beaten up to help men look good in front of their girlfriends. What other service could he provide?
Well, who says he has to only work for the guys? Like, think about women who go out on dates and they have the whole thing of like, they'll text their friend, if things are going bad, you're going to call me and I'm going to have an emergency to leave. He could show up posing as their boyfriend and extricate them from bad dates.
That's a very good idea. What do you think, Toby? What else could this guy be doing?
So first of all, I like the idea that whoever paid him now, like, he's sort of obligated to fight just about anybody who messes with his girlfriend. Like, it's just...
And it's going to be a disaster.
It's just going to get the shit kicked out of him all the time. Obviously, you can't see the picture, but he does look like he's like a roadie for Pantera or something. So I think just showing up probably makes you look pretty good by comparison.
What do you think, Kevin?
Yeah, I think he's just going to help you open the pickle jar. Oh, you're a big, strong man.
The
he just
pickle
loses
jar.
it for him. Yeah.
Like on SNL with Travis Kelce, hire you to lift your girlfriend up because you're such a weak little man. All right, that's going to do it from us. But before I go, Laura Bricker, how can folks reach you online if they want to say hi?
You can find me at Laura Bricker on Instagram and Blue Sky, and you can probably see my initial adventures up the Mount Washington and the Snowcat this weekend if you check it out.
Wow. How can you be found online, Toby?
You know, I'm still on Twitter, but that place is a freaking nightmare.
Yep.
Like, I can't believe the shit that's in my timeline. So the best place to follow me is Blue Sky, where I am at TobyBallinH.
Yeah, I'm still on Twitter too, but I'd follow me on Blue Sky because that's where like it's more fun interacting with people. You can follow the show everywhere at Crime Writers on. Oh, I'm Reb Lavoie, by the way, on Blue Sky, on Instagram, everywhere. But you can follow the show at
is that the thing you forgot to ask? You forgot to mention?
Oh, I forgot to ask you how people can find you, Kevin.
Don't bother. Don't bother. I'm going in a bunker.
You're
Fuck
Kevin
all of you.
P. Flynn on all the apps, right?
Not Blue Sky.
Fine.
Oh, yeah, you changed it. Sorry.
I changed my handles.
That's right.
Yeah,
nice
yeah,
job.
Kevin
exactly.
P. Flynn
I'm
everywhere.
Kevin P. Flynn
Kevin,
everywhere.
I'm so sorry. You're so handsome. I was just distracted by your cute blue shirt. Again, I'm Reb Lavoie on all the apps. The show is Crime Writers on all the apps. You can get episodes early and ad-free at patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media. You'll also get the after show, Married with Podcast, Laura Bricker's Leave It to Bricker podcast, and Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcasts. Our theme song was composed and performed by Ty Gibbons. Our editor is the really terrific Livy Burdett. The EP of this show is Kevin. This show was recorded in Studio C, the closet in our New Hampshire basement, where we also are forced, believe it or not, to use a makeshift toilet. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later.
What are you doing, Rocky?
All right.
What are you doing?
Laura, you know we're recording a podcast.
I do.
Right?
I'm sorry.
Just checking.
Laura, there is a button on your microphone
to mute,
so that when you turn to talk to your cat, who has not had surgery that we are aware of,
no,
you could just
mute.
I could mute. I'm sorry. He has not
right.
had surgery. He
That's
has
right.
a PP issue sometimes, but he hasn't had that lately.
This podcast is brought to you by Ritalin.
If only. If only.
in crime media. Where'd you get those shoes? DSW has all the shoes you need for whatever you're into. You know, like running shoes that give new meaning to personal best, or everyday sneakers that make coffee runs look cool. Basically, DSW has all the best styles from the brands that always get it right, like Nike, Brooks, Timberland, and more. Oh yeah, did we mention they also happen to be the perfect price? Find a shoe for every you at your DSW store and DSW.com.